So one thing I'm kind of conscious of, and I learned this from just working with patients all the time, is, to like match somebody's energy. So if somebody comes in and they're kind of a little bit like quieter or calmer, or, to sort of, I don't know. So it's almost like your energy fields come into sync. And sometimes you've got to kind of consciously make an effort to kind of sync with that person's energy. And I think, it's almost to like get onto their wavelength.
So
I think, yeah.
It's a little bit like when you're giving your classes.
Yeah.
And you're having this, the mindfulness moment in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's also sort of syncing up the
energy
in the room.
Yeah.
As woo as it might sound, but there is something to it, right?
Yeah. To sort of get everybody on a similar kind of energetic kind of level playing field,
Yeah.
I think when it's almost like some people can't raise their game to then match your energy.
Mm.
And then that becomes like hard work for them, So I think that's also why I learned with working with clients and patients to just kind of come in at their level so they don't feel like they have to match it. But then also just, you also don't want to come in and drain somebody's energy, right? But I mean, what do you think drains somebody's energy?
Probably one of the biggest draining factors is if people think that they need to be someone else or they pretend to be someone else, because then that's automatically not only is this stressing you in a way, but also you can't act naturally. You have to think, right? You have to always watch yourself. Is what you're doing aligned with the mask that you're trying to wear at this point? And that's super stressful and super draining. So I think that's one of the key things where people are in a room with other people and they think for whatever reason they need to be someone else, or even need to leave some sort of impression on the other person. Right? That's I think why a lot of people find meetings or business meetings so draining and exhausting, because a lot of the times in the settings you have to, I mean, you don't have to, but people think they have to put up a certain persona mask, play a little bit of theater, and that of course takes effort. And that's I think that's one of the most draining things. What do you think?
I think you're 100% right. Like living up to other people's expectations, or what you think other people's expectations are, right? Just trying to think of the scenarios where like I felt drained by somebody else's energy. Yeah, I mean, I think...
Sorry, if you want to...
No, Carron.
So one of the things where I always feel drained and out of my energy is when I'm meeting my parents, right? Because then is exactly where I feel like I can't... I mean, there's this whole history that comes in, but then you also have to, or I always feel like I have to fulfill the role of the good son, the successful son, whatever it is, right? And that I find incredibly draining and exhausting. That's why, typically never meet more than 3 days, because I think it goes both ways right now. For my parents, it's draining to be in the energy of the kids, because they can't just open up to that.
Yeah.
And I think for me and everyone else who's coming, it seems quite draining because it's playing a different role than you naturally are.
Yeah, so true. And it's like about other people's expectations of you, and can you meet those expectations, right? Or do you feel like you're meeting those expectations? Yeah, just kind of, I think it's draining when you just can't feel like you can't authentically just be yourself, like you. I mean, that goes back to what you were saying about having a mask on or acting a certain persona. And I think the sad thing is that some people they can't ground, and they can't connect to who they truly are, because they're so distracted by the expectations, right? So they're so distracted by
the expectation that they think other people have of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So I think, like, if people could connect more deeply to who they truly are and what's truly important to them and what they value, and to sort of stay centered in that. Like, I think if you can, like, we just said you hold on to your truth, right? When you're having hard or challenging conversations or whatever, and I think people really struggle to do that because it's, I don't know, because of the expectations and because of like being pulled sort of off center by those things. I don't know.
But then what do you think can people do to change it? Like, how can you learn to be in that authentic self and that authentic energy that you have, and in that authentic way you feel like grounded with?
I mean, I think like physically, like just literally bringing your attention to your body like noticing your body, like actually like really thinking about grounding, like really thinking about like connecting to, like literally feeling like you sort of grounding yourself. I mean, have you ever seen like people, like kids always lie on the floor, right? Trying to ground themselves, right? And so, but if you just become aware of your feet on the floor, or and your base chakra, and I'm talking about stuff I don't know, but your base chakra sits in your pelvis, right? And if you just imagine like grounding yourself through that, I think even that can just kind of help sort of ground you. But I think it takes a bit of practice. And then also just kind of like centering your mind. Like even now, like I'm finding this drone so distracting.
Okay.
And it's like, it like pulls me off center, and I like really got to struggle to concentrate on what it is I'm trying to say. Like I feel like I'm being a bit fake, you know? So like, and I think that's a bit like being in a meeting with somebody where you feel like you're having to take on a role or a persona, you know? Like I feel like I've got to talk about something intelligent.
Or to have to say something smart.
Talk about pressure. But you know, so you know, so it's distracting, and then it's very difficult to get your message across. So I think if you can, you know, and it's like you've got to be aware of like the mind and your thoughts, and you can feel when you kind of off center. You can feel when you're sort of struggling to connect with what you really want to say or who you really are. I don't know.
Absolutely, and it's not only in meetings. I even feel that, and you know, we had the thing with the presentation deck a few days back, right? Where even if there's something, almost like if I need to sign off on something that I'm not fully behind, where this is like, this is actually not me. This is just something that's not authentic. This is something where it feels fabricated or feels like bullshit. I'm just making up to, fulfill some business expectations or whatever. I also like a physical reaction to that. I almost really feel that this doesn't feel right. Literally, it doesn't feel right. Right, and so. And I think it's very interesting to learn to listen to that, because if you look at it from the other perspective, if you then notice that, and it's about learning to feel your own emotions, feel your own body, feel where you're centered. If you can notice these moments and then say, okay, something isn't right, this is not authentically me, and then try to make it authentic, quote unquote.
Bring yourself back to center.
Bring yourself back to center, because I think trying to force authenticity is also not good.
Work either, right?
Yeah, so like... I was a kind of side comment. I was listening to an interesting talk. There was the Alan Watts. I don't know if you heard it. Yeah,
to me, I didn't.
Where he said like you can't try to be authentic, because authenticity is not something that you try to do. It's like authenticity flows. And I think that's the part. So, but if you then notice that it's not, it doesn't seem to be flowing. It's not what doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
The good thing is with all these things, I think we intuitively know what's right and what's not right. So intuitively, if I have a deck, for example, in the business context of presentation, which I know that isn't me, I intuitively know what needs to be fixed to make it me or whatever.
Let's make it more authentic.
Where do we go?
Let's go this way, along the river. Authenticity.
Yeah. What Alan Watts said, that you can't really force authenticity or try to be authentic, because that by definition is not trying. Exactly. Yeah. Kind of nervous, since we're just playing around with the idea of using this thing to this record conversations. Why do you feel like you need to talk differently when a camera is running than?
No, but that's the thing. So I mean, I'm like it's a bit like being in a meeting or playing a role instead of like, what are other people going to think of you? Do you really have anything meaningful to say? You know, like, what makes you or I interesting to other people? Why would anybody want to listen to our conversation in the forest? I mean, you know, so that's what goes on in my head. Like, it just doesn't, you know, and we often have these interesting discussions in these sort of intimate conversations. It's like, do I really want other people listening to them? You know, I don't know, like, is it going to take away something from our conversations? You know, because can one really be honest and authentic when there's an audience? You know, like if it's an audience that you don't know, and, you know, and then people are going to comment or make comments or whatever, like, I don't know. It's just also not my, you know me, I'm like not on social media.
I'm typically also not, like, I wouldn't, as I said, that it's But I also think we're not posting pictures of every food item, every handbag.
But in a way, this is way more intimate than, it's way more intimate to post the conversation.
Absolutely, but I think that's also why it's way more interesting, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Because, and the reason why I think people are, look, there's always going to be someone who finds it interesting, right? It's like, of all the people in the world, we know how many people we know in our private life where we're having great conversations with, and enjoy the conversations. It's not like there would be a single person in this world that could potentially be interested in what we're saying.
Fuck's sake, so boring.
So I think, is there someone who's gonna find this interesting? Yes. I think the other part is talking about authenticity. What we discussed, like in the age and advent of this AI generated slop where everything is just like this generic artificial stuff. I think people will look for authenticity and they will look for guidance. And then don't forget that why I think this also might be interesting is that a lot of people have they have retracted to their own environments, so enclosed space. They're not going out with people. They're not being part of these conversations. They're not witnessing these conversations. So if I look at, I don't want to judge our children, but if I compare myself 25, 30 years ago, when I was younger, and then I don't know what's happening behind closed doors, but it feels like there was a different quality of conversation because there was no social media. There was no, all you had was sitting together and having conversations. And I think that's
the telephone, right?
Yeah. And I think that's something that's becoming less and less common. But fundamentally, I believe people do have a need for authentic conversations or interesting conversations or just discussing questions, right? And I think this might be an interesting way for people to witness some of these conversations, whether they're, and I'm not saying that we're right about anything. It's just one
experiment.
Yes, an experiment, and it's just two opinions.
Exactly. I mean, the thing but I think it's also about connection, and I think people are like inherently looking for connection. Well, that's what I believe. Maybe not everybody. I think people are looking for connection, and I think that's also, it goes back to the authenticity thing. I think it's very difficult to connect deeply if you can't be authentic, because I think it's Brené Brown, and she talks about, vulnerability, and vulnerability I think goes with authenticity, because if you can't kind of expose yourself, or if you can't be vulnerable with somebody else, it's very difficult to connect, because also if you putting up a persona or putting up a version of yourself, and the other person supposedly loves that version of you, I think there's part of you that always will believe that you are not truly loved, because you're actually not showing your true self. So you think, okay, well, they love that persona, or in a business setting, like they respect or admire that persona, but they don't really know who I am, right? So I think if you can't be authentic, you also then can't be vulnerable. And if you can't be vulnerable, it's very difficult to have true connection. And if you can't have true connection, I think it's very difficult to feel loved. So, and I think, I'm not sure how that ties into what you're talking about with the kids and that the sort of younger generations, but I think there is I don't know, maybe you can't generalize, because I also think in some ways the younger generation are very open about everything. They talk about their period cramps and their mood, and they're very open to sharing quite a lot of themselves, because social media just splashes it all out there. So I think in some ways there's that kind of layer. Is there the deeper connection? I don't know. Are there meaningful conversations? I don't know. But maybe teenagers, maybe when we were teenagers, we weren't having deep, meaningful conversations.
We were not.
I think when I was older, like when I was like 17, 18, 19, started having like deeper conversations and things like that. But I think it's not unusual when you're younger to, for the conversations and the interactions to be kind of more superficial, more high level. But I think it depends on the personality of the child, and I think it depends on, the character and all of those elements.
Yeah.
But I do think there's an epidemic of loneliness for sure, because people don't know how to truly connect,
But going back to the question, like how would this potentially be relevant, what we're maybe trying to do, I don't know, not to people. So there's probably two ways how you learn to find the connection, to go through these emotions, to everything. One is by experiencing it and by having these conversations yourself. But I believe a lot of learning that's happening as humans in general is just by observing, right? So if you look at learning languages, it seems to be that a better way than to just study grammar and then just repeat it is actually or listen to TV shows, whatever, repeat the stuff. And then over time, as you do, you will get an intuitive feeling for how things are actually, things need to sound, how the sentences need to be constructed and so on. So I think you don't necessarily need to learn everything by the book and then do it. And I think in a similar way, why is it that people, why do we have stars, celebrities, all that? Because it's kind of this feeling of connection by proxy. Almost, right? Where you have, you feel like you're part of that. You feel like you're part of that group. You feel like you're part of that person. You feel like you understand that
part
person.
of a community, or
And so that's why I believe it's necessarily nonsensical to think that for people who don't have these conversations, who don't want these conversations, who maybe just prefer to listen to others, that might provide some value.
I mean, it's quite an intimate thing in a way, I guess. I mean, I think, sorry, I've got like 5 thoughts going on in my head about intimacy and connection and community. Like I think people, and also you talk about like mimicking, or not mimicking, but kind of almost like emulating. And like I think it's a little bit like, your children learn by example. They don't learn from what you tell them or what you say to them.
Oh yeah.
So I think that was the first sort of thing that I picked up about what you said. Like, to sort of create or to set a good example of what a respectful, open conversation looks like, where you can be honest with each other and can be open about things and authentic about things, and I think, it ties back to authenticity and feeling connected and being able to be vulnerable, and so, if we can have those kind of conversations, I certainly don't want to have all of those kind of conversations on camera, that's for sure.
No, it's just,
but
and there's always the filter, right? We decide it's not like we're live streaming this and then it's like, okay, now let's talk about our sexual perversions, right? It's like, it's whatever
I think he's running out of battery again.